Hey, what is going on guys? Welcome back to my channel. After I posted my drone video, which you can find in the link below, by far the most asked question was what settings I used in order to achieve this image. So I decided to make a video and explain to you guys exactly how I set up my drone before flying, but also what I do in post in order to achieve these results. Before we dive into the video, I want to stress that the settings by themselves won't give you the cinematic look. You must also fly very precisely with no sudden movements of the drone on the gimbal. Also, camera angles do count a lot and the camera movements, and if you want to learn more about that, please check the link down below. I made an entire video showing you guys how you can do these movements just like you see in the video behind me. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing for more content like this. Now that we got that out of the way, let's dive into this topic. Once you open your app, the first thing that you want to do is go into the video settings and you want to switch to manual. Shooting in manual is a very important thing. It lets you customize your settings to perfectly match the weather, lighting, and any other factors that might come up. Shooting in auto will often change your settings in mid-flight if the shoot gets more or less exposed, and that will show in your footage. And you don't want that, trust me. Now, once you switch to manual, the first thing that you want to do is turn your ISO to the lowest setting possible. In this case, 100. I always try to keep my ISO to 100. Increasing the value of the ISO will bring noise to your image and it won't be as clean. Unless you want to shoot at night in dark situations, I will say that the ISO should stay at 100. Once we got that out of the way, we can move to the next thing, and for that we will jump into the next tab, which is the camera here. In terms of the image size, I always like to shoot 4K at 24 frames per second or 30 FPS if I have to move the drone faster. But the 24 frames per second will give you the most film-like look, unless you only watch The Hobbit. Even if your video needs to be at 1080p in the end, shooting in 4K and downsizing to 1080p will make a big difference compared to shooting and exporting at 1080p. The downsized footage will retain a lot of the details and the image will look sharper. Something to keep in mind. If you want to shoot some slow motion, you can always switch to 120 FPS at 1080p. Now that you chose your desired resolution, we need to jump back into the first panel and turn your attention to the shutter tab. There is something very important known as the 180-degree shutter rule, not to be confused with the 180-degree rule. If you want to read more about either of these two to understand the difference, I'll leave some links down below. This rule states that you have to set the shutter speed double your frame rate. This is used to mimic the motion the human eye creates. So if the shutter needs to be double your frame rate, you now need to set the shutter speed accordingly. If you decide to shoot in 24 frames per second, you must set the shutter speed to 1/50th of a second or 1/50. If you shoot in 30 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/60. If you decide to go for that slow motion at 120 FPS, shutter speed must go to 1/240 and so on. I hope this makes sense. Now that you have your ISO pinned at 100, the shutter speed and resolution in harmony, you might notice that your image looks blown out. Which of the settings should you change to balance the exposure? If the settings need to be a certain way, that's where these bad boys come in. These are ND filters, and to oversimplify, they're like sunglasses for your drone. So whenever you go out and it's too sunny, you put your sunglasses on and everything's alright. Well, it's the same for this. Depending on how sunny it is, whatever you're shooting, you want to put the right ND filter on. So I have the ND filters from Newer. This is the brand, and they come with an ND 4, 8, and 16. Also the polarized version that help with reflection and glare. And basically I would say that ND filters are a must for shooting with your drone, and once you use them you will never really want to go back. Now there are some more premium brands than Newer, like Polar Pro. I will leave links to both of these in the description. I got these Newer ones because they're a bit cheaper and I found that they work extremely well for me as well. Now that our exposure is right, what's next? What you want to do is go back to the video tab. Here you can choose your video format. I use MP4. White balance. Now with white balance I suggest you set it yourself depending on how it is outside, sunny or cloudy and so on. Next up we have style, and here are my settings for the style of the image. I keep it on custom and -1 to everything. This allows me to tweak the colors easier in post, which I suggest you do too if you want to get the most out of your footage. There is no tragedy if you don't color correct, the footage can still look amazing. In this case, run some tests and see which profile matches your style the most. In terms of color, I use this in a like. This again gives me more flexibility in post, allowing me to edit the footage to my liking. This is everything that has to do with the drone settings. Now once you got out and got your shot, you might leave it as it is, or you can take it to the next level in post. My software of choice is Premiere Pro. Once you open your software, you want to import your footage as I did here. Drag it to the timeline. I'm gonna cut it a bit because the first plot is black. Okay. And what I like to do is click on the video, go to the basic correction, and just tweak the settings a bit. So in this case, I would say the exposure is right. I would add a bit more contrast, increase the highlights, drop the shadows, increase the whites, and drop the blacks. This is good. It's just like a small tweak to the image to make it look pop a bit more. As you can see, the highlights, maybe I'll drag them down a bit because I lose detail. And maybe the shadows. Okay, once you do that, once you get your basic correction done with the image, nothing too fancy, nothing too much, what you want to do is right click and add a new item. What I do is I add an adjustment layer and add the adjustment layer on top. And everything that I do, any edits that I do that are more heavy, I like to do them on this adjustment layer and not on the video itself. So what I do most of the times is whenever I have an adjustment layer, I apply a LUT. A LUT is basically a lookup table that has some values that basically alter the colors of the image to make it look a certain way. So what you want to do is click on the adjustment layer on the creative tab, and here where it says look, just browse your LUT. As you can see here, there are a bunch of LUTs that come with the Premiere Pro that change the image, but I'm gonna just add some custom ones that I bought and I found over the time. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of LUTs. I'm just gonna go with the first one to see how it looks. The Blockbuster. See, the Blockbuster just like increases the colors, make them pop a bit more. I think this is a bit extreme in this case, so I'm gonna just decrease the intensity a bit, maybe the saturation a bit, and increase the vibrance maybe a bit like that. I like how this looks. This looks very nice. So this was after, this is before, this is after. See the difference in color and everything. Let's try a different LUT. Let's say, how about this teal and orange 3? This is a bit more desaturated. The blues are taking towards the teal, as you can see here. So this is like a proper teal and orange LUT. I will decrease its intensity, but I want to still keep the teal in the skies. Maybe the saturation to make it look a bit more dramatic. Increase the vibrance in that. Maybe add a bit of faded film look. How about that? Be like that. This is a completely different style that it was brought to the image, as you can see, with just the help of a LUT. So I would suggest go out, find some of these LUTs, buy some of these LUTs. They make your footage just look amazing. They make your footage just look completely different and stand out from the rest from a basic image. So this is my process. This is a very short version of my process. You can also go and adjust the curves and play with each color in this tab here, change the value of each color, change how each color looks. So this is basically just like a summary of what I do in terms of editing of the colors. So I basic correct the video, and then using an adjustment layer, I apply some of these more drastic changes. Now the final step is actually exporting the footage. So what I do is go to export media, and this window will come up. I use the H.264 format and matching source with the highest bitrate. You can select the name. Down here I'm just gonna leave it as the source. I don't really want to change much. You can change the resolution if you want to, but I'm just gonna leave them as it is. Now the bitrate setting is a very important tab. I've done a lot of tests with my videos, and I found that the CBR at 40 or more megabits per second works best for me, creates the highest image quality. And what you want to do is you want to use maximum render quality, hit export, and that's your video. So this is basically my process. This is the settings that I use and the editing process that I use in Premiere Pro to achieve the colors and the image quality. For example, if you would lower the bitrate here, then the image on the YouTube at the end, it won't look as sharp, it won't look as detailed. So yeah guys, this is basically my process. This is how I went on creating the video of my drone, which you can find in the link below. I want to thank you so much for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please make sure you leave a like and you subscribe. Until the next video, take care.